everybody, and welcome to Cicada Innovations panel on science and innovation for National Science Week. My name is Sally Ann Williams, and I'm absolutely delighted to have you joining us, both live for those of you watching now and for those of you who will watch this video in the future. So I'd like to kick off our event with acknowledging the traditional custodians on the land on which we are meeting today. And I want to acknowledge that that is many and varied lands across the country now known as Australia. For me, I'm joining on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I want to pay my respects to elders past, present, emerging, and just recognise that continued care, custodianship and connection to country. As we kick off today, I want to tell you two little things really quickly. A little bit about Cicada Innovations for those of you who don't know us. We are Australia's oldest and largest deep tech incubator, and we support founders and businesses solving some of the world's most pressing problems through science and engineering. We're doing this panel this week because we're really excited about science and engineering, and we love Science Week. National Science Week is such a phenomenal opportunity to shine a spotlight on some of the things that we as people benefit from, but we don't necessarily see under the hood, and we don't necessarily see the innovators, the creators, and the people that are designing solutions for people, planet, and for our future prosperity. So super excited to kick off this panel today and to celebrate National Science Week and you know, quite frankly, celebrate the people that I'm going to be talking to today. So without further ado, I'm going to invite my panelists to put their cameras on and get ready for as I introduce them. I'm thrilled today that we have three amazing inventors and innovation specialists from various walks of life. We've got Alison Todd, who is the Chief Scientific Officer and co-founder of SpeedX. Now, I could talk about Alison forever, but you should just look up her bio on the event link for this website because it's insane how many patents this woman and her company hold. She is such a creative individual building an amazing company that I've had the privilege of seeing here as the Cicada Innovations residents, solving some of our challenges around molecular diagnostics and antimicrobial resistance. But she's also just a really good, fun human as well. And so, Ali, thank you so much for joining. We're delighted that you could make the time for us today. And I know you're joining us from a different part of our country.
I'm joining from Larrakia country up in Darwin. So thank you for the invitation.
Thanks, Ali. My second panelist today is another Cicada resident, but Peter Tomic, who is the CEO of Sustenance. So we're going from molecular diagnostics and human health and working with patients and you know, looking for good outcomes for people to somebody that's looking at some of the fundamental challenges of people and planet in a planetary sense and some of the challenges we deal with human waste. And we'll get into that in a moment. But Peter, thank you so much for joining us and representing Sustenance. You're on mute, Peter.
First point, yes. Thanks for having us and thanks for the invite. Pleasure being here.
Thank you so much. And we're going to dig into your background a little bit too, because you guys have got very different backgrounds. And then to my cereal founder, and that's not a founder of cereal that we might have for breakfast food, but I cannot help myself but build many businesses. And we're going to get into the why of that in some point. Liesl Yearsley, you're the CEO of Aiken, but it's not your first gander at this, but we're really excited to talk to you a little bit today about your experience and background, robotics, technology, AI, and building lots of businesses and doing it again and again and again. So thank you so much for making the time to join us today.
It's my pleasure. Look forward to talking and meeting.
Fantastic. So the first thing that I really want to do and dig into, I did sort of say you've all got a different journey into your founder experience right now. And I really want to unpack this because I think it's important to bust some myths that the only people that can be founders are people that have gone through a research pathway in a university or in a commercial research lab, or you know that it's a very linear and straight line to how you become the founder or the CEO of a deep tech business. So Ali, let's talk about your journey. I know a little bit about this, and I think it's fascinating. You spent years doing research work and working in large laboratories for a multinational organization. You know, tell us a little bit about why did you decide or, you know, what happened to make you start and found your company, for those who don't know the story of SpeedX?
Yeah, I had a very long career in big pharma, working for Johnson and Johnson, and you know, within that context, obviously, I gained pretty broad experience, and I was sort of pretty comfortable there, and may well have sort of stayed. The global financial crisis put an end to all that, because Johnson & Johnson decided to close a whole bunch of their research laboratories around the world, and Johnson Research Australia was one of those. So I found myself sort of mid-career and redundant. But I developed some great technology with Elisa Vacani. She had been my PhD student through the University of New South Wales. We'd patented while we were there at J&J, and J&J said to us that if indeed we could find some venture capital, they would assign that intellectual property to us, our invention, and we could have a crack at starting our own company, and that's exactly what we did. So that was in 2009. We've been going for 13 years now, and we have grown the company from 4 people up to about 120, and have offices here in Sydney, also in London, and a small lab in the US also. So I guess that's the journey. I was pushed rather than pulled. But the driving thing behind it always was to invent and get my inventions out there, such that they were making a difference in the field of human health.
I love so much about your story, and we're going to come back to that as we sort of circle around the conversation with everyone today. But I love so much of that idea of you've got a great idea, but being pushed. And maybe, just maybe, if the GFC hadn't happened, that push might not have happened. And so we never know. And we don't want to kind of, you know, presume for that, but that sort of drive to bring that product to market, and then taking that opportunity and really going through the many sort of long journey and iteration of what that is incredible, because most people don't think about that. We think about the stereotypical pathway of founders being driven to start a company, but, you know, sometimes it is almost by accident and not by design, and yet you can be incredibly impactful and growing. Peter, your journey is a little bit different, because you aren't a scientific founder. You don't come from that background. You come from working in consultancy and in business in a completely different field. How on earth do you end up going from there to coming in and finding your pathway? And again, you know, I kind of know this story too, but it's a really good one, right? How did you kind of get onto this bandwagon of like, I'm gonna work in sustainability and ag tech, and I'm gonna found a business and do that?
I guess the best answer is somewhat random, and I guess that's the whole point of this panel, is to bring that awareness a bit more of that there are paths like this that exist, and it's viable for people like myself. So, bit of background about me. I mean, since I was a kid, I've always was the one who disassembled every single toy to see what's inside, and I was always inherently curious what's going on. But in all my endeavors and ventures that I've done from an early age, one thing that was always lacking was structure. So I ended up going in a corporate world. And I say to being a director, and about, you know, corporate and structure and dynamics and clients and agility. And I had some amazing experiences through these times, including training. I mean, training opportunities that they give you and backgrounds that they give you is amazing. But what they also don't give you is, I guess, level of agility and autonomy that you can actually really make an impact and make a difference. And throughout my journeys, I've started asking myself the questions, not only from job security in today's world with big corporates, especially in consulting world, which is changing so much, but also in how much of an impact and how much of a difference am I actually making being a cog in a wheel versus building a machine that can actually make something different. Hence ended up here. And yeah, how I ended up here was purely random. I mean, it started with free beer, and pretty much I'm here 4 years later.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm not letting you off the hook with it started with free beer. You need to give me 3 sentences that unpack how did you meet your co-founder? Why did you guys join up? And, at least give us those 2 sentences.
Sure. Actually, we met because of Cicada. And Cicada is one of the key reasons why I'm here. And I'm really grateful for that. Because my co-founder was the one who joined the program of making a scientific idea into a business, except he's a scientist. And Cicada was trying to give him those grounds. And a friend of mine who was already involved here literally dragged me here for free beer. So I ended up here. I ended up meeting my co-founder, and it just started from there. So thanks, Sally.
You're welcome, but I'm going to bust a myth that there's a lot of free beer at Cicada right now. Not the case, but there's some amazing people.
They are indeed.
We're going to come back to we'll come back to Sustainant and unpack a little bit more about what Sustainant does in a minute. Liesl, you've got a crazy impressive history of starting businesses and exiting them, right? So now you're CEO of Aiken. So you're using AI and robotic technology in the home, but you've also done, you founded Cognia, an AI platform that was acquired by IBM and powers Watson. You founded a search engine company that you took public. You've got lots of patents and lots and lots and lots of citations. Why do you keep doing it? What is the drive? Can you just not help yourself? Is it just that you wake up and fall over and go, oh my God, I've got to start another business? What is going on with your story and pathway?
I think there's basically 3 things. Yeah. So as Sally Ann just said, my last company was actually bought by IBM. I bootstrapped it from a research grant, basically, all the way to a big multinational corporation. We had about 26,000 developers using the platform when IBM bought it. And the search engine was a very deep tech search engine. It was just a kooky idea and went public. Part of it is just sheer ridiculous masochism and stubborn-headedness. Some people come to me and say, I want to be an entrepreneur. I said, do you want to not get paid half of your life? Do you want to bash your head against the wall? Do you want 80% of what you do to be flushed down a toilet every day? And you still got to do this because there's nothing else you can do with your life but this life work that you have to do. And if that's you, then you should be an entrepreneur. If it's not, it's hard. And it's so interesting. Once you've tasted it, you can't go back to, and that's the second point. The most precious thing we have is our life energy. Each moment of time. Money is infinite. Ideas are infinite. Everything's infinite. But time and life energy is not. And, every endeavor you take to do it properly, it's not a 1-year flip around. It's a 10-year part of your life. And each decade of your life is a precious and finite thing. What are you going to give it to? I used to mentor at Singularity University, and I'd always say, is what you're doing, does it have the potential to reach 1 million lives, 100 million lives, and shift gravity? And if it doesn't, then you should be thinking about that. So I think that driving force of meaningful work is important to me. Masochism and just stupid determination is important. I think a lot of it is your life path. I did read a study by particularly female CEOs. Most of successful had quite adverse childhoods. That seems to be a statistical finding. If you don't grow up with a lot of comfort, you grow up either kind of huddling or going, well, gee, I'm just going to change this. So I literally grew up in a civil war in Central Africa. I was taught to defend my family when I was 6 years old. I was a refugee, an actual refugee from Robert Mugabe, Zimbabwe, and I had to start selling stuff when I was 12 years old because I had no school uniform and no shoes. So I started just figuring out. I used to walk in the bush and pick flowers and press them and make greeting cards and sell them at church. So I've just always learned to hustle. And another life path thing that kicked me around was I was learning to code when I was 12 or 13. I went to extracurricular classes and I tried to get into college. We by that point moved to South Africa, which was just not just racist, it was sexist. It was just everything. And I remember turning up at the engineering faculty and said, I'm going to be an engineer. And this guy sat there and said to me, look around, lady. He said, you can apply if you like, but there's no girls in here. They had 0 women in computational sciences. So I did apply. I was a straight A student. I didn't get in. But in a funny, then I then studied medicine, did a couple of years of very scientific work there, and I couldn't pay my medical school fees. There was no HEC. So, trying to go down a scientific path, trying to go down a classic academic path. And in a way, I kind of blessed the universe for that, because it took this brain and this energy, and I had to go sideways with it. And I went to go and figure out where is society going? Where is technology going? Where are they going to intersect 5 years from now? I'm going there. And so you get to kind of apply energy in a certain way. And that was a great gift. Not being thwarted basically in my initial life path was probably the biggest factor.
There is just so much richness in what you've said. And I could see some head nodding happening from everybody around, from all of us kind of nodding. I just want to call out a couple of things, because I think these are really key takeaways for people that are watching this. Is I love the fact that you acknowledge, it's bloody hard to be an entrepreneur, right? So if you're going to do it for the glory, forget it, right? If you're doing it because the hard times about hard things. Yeah, it's rough, right? It's really, really rough. And I think that people think it's all, glamorous kind of opportunities, and it is going to be an overnight success, but you've got to have a conviction about what you're doing, that it really matters. And that you're convicted, that you're willing enough to shift your perspective on maybe how the product is delivered, to get to I want it in the hands of people. And so how do I pull together funding? How do I pull together the team? How do I convince people to buy from me? How do I, market this thing? How do I, if you're not in a place where there's a facilities manager and you're working from your garage, unclog your own toilet at home, so to speak? And I know a lot of entrepreneurs that have had to do those things. It is a really, really tough journey. And I think that resilience that you speak to, and that real determination to make a difference is an absolute, it's an absolute driver of what we sort of see around here every day in the community and the networks that we get to. I want to dig into that with all of you. And Peter, I'm going to start with you. But that little bit of about why you're doing your current business, and unpack it. First of all, you have to tell everybody in sort of, the 2-sentence pitch for it, the elevator pitch about what you do and why it matters. But why is that going to be your life's work, or this decade's work, to Liesel's point? Peter, I'll start with you, and then I might come to you, Ali, and then Liesel as well.
Sure. So, for those of you who don't know Sustenant is at its heart and its core a biotechnology company. And this is why we are also part of Cicada, because it is a deep tech and science-based company. But what we actually do is we are not pure scientists. We are taking science and applying it to big global problems on industrial scale. We've noticed that there is an issue with agriculture in its utilization of waste and resources, as well as very thin margin and sustainability of the farmers. And we thought we could use biotechnology combined with engineering and IT technology to create or give them ability to turn their waste and their products that are byproducts of their existence and production into an additional revenue streams. And we are addressing several points there. We are addressing carbon emissions from burning this kind of waste, which is very generally burnt or just left in a field to rot. We're also creating new revenue streams, making industry more sustainable. And we're also addressing industrial challenges that various producers have. It's from working only part of the year because it's a seasonal production, all the way to how do I create sustainable economies in remote areas, in arable lands? How do I revive country and life in a country? So to connect to the points of why we are doing this is all those points, touch either part of my history or touch parts of, as Liesel said, what am I dedicating this decade to? Because it is really a decade's work, and I'm about halfway through it here. It is just very interesting to see impact we can make, and also legacy, I guess, that we can leave to people and planet and the environment around us, which I think is the only thing we've got. Time and life force together with the impact you make to the humans around yourself is pretty much, in my book, why we are here.
So thanks for that, Peter. And for those of you who haven't checked out Sustenance website, you know, they're doing some amazing stuff right now. And I know a little bit behind the scenes because this is what I get to see behind under the hood every day. But the pilot production plant up with, you know, on the far north coast of New South Wales is taking agricultural waste from the sugarcane industry. So if you think about sugarcane and the burns, they're taking all of that now and turning it into, you know, fodder, enriched fodder for livestock and these whole other sort of materials. And it's really cool to see that actually getting from an idea and something that's happening in the lab, but actually now it's a pilot production plant and how many tons they are planning on being able to do and process on a weekly and monthly basis. Ali, talk us through a little bit about your why with SpeedX. And, you know, I know you do small molecule sort of work and you do, you know, diagnostic kits and antimicrobial resistance, but unpack a little bit of the why and how you kind of bringing science to change people's lives and outcomes for us and your personal why, because I think the personal resonance that you each have with your journey is really powerful too.
Well, SpeedX is really a company that aims to you know, which bacteria is personalized medicine or precision medicine, whatever you prefer to people, you know, drugs that are in fact not going to work, but they're just going to push those organisms to develop new resistance mechanisms. So there's sort of two ways that that we tackle this. So some of our tests will tell you what STI you have and what drug you're resistant to. So in those cases, we can switch therapies and give you one that will be effective. Some of the other tests we have will determine, say, that you have gonorrhea, and it will also tell you if you are sensitive to an old drug that's no longer empirically used. So it's no longer prescribed without knowing that it will work, basically, because there's you know 30 or 40% resistance in the community already. So what that enables us to do is to reuse old drugs and to use the full arsenal of drugs that are actually out there, and then in turn that means that we preserve what drugs we do have at hand. So there are kind of many ways to help in this sort of fight, you know, against rising resistance levels all over the world to various antibiotics. And I mean, my journey for personalised medicine goes back, what, 30 years to some very early work at Johnson & Johnson when we actually showed that we could detect circulating tumour DNA in plasma from patients that had colorectal cancer. People kind of laughed at that back then. Now this is a very common tool. They call it liquid biopsy, and we use it to monitor how patients are going, you know, with their therapy. So if you have an idea and you have something that you believe in, even if others don't believe in it, if you just keep on chipping away, maybe eventually you might get there and your dream might come true. Because we now sell liquid biopsy. Well, we license our technology. So in-house we mainly do infectious diseases, but we out-license our technology for cancer, for diagnostics and disease monitoring with liquid biopsy, and those tests also define what therapy will be appropriate for various cancer patients. So we are, I believe, you know, really helping people around the world get better.
I actually just learned something new about SpeedX. I didn't realize what you were actually like. I knew you licensed technologies. I didn't actually realize that it was in that specific sort of those specific fields that you do. So it's quite amazing. Again, when you hang out with founders all of the time in amazing companies, you keep learning more and more about their journey and what impact they've had. For those of you who are watching this and don't understand the terror that antimicrobial resistance means for us as people and planet, please go check out some of the amazing resources. We have an antimicrobial resistance commercialization course that we've done with CSIRO on our website. But the superbug is a real concern for us. And it's not just how we take and ingest antibiotics, but it's actually through an entire food and plant production supply chain as well. So I don't want to terrify you and keep you up at night, but the superbug is something to be dealing with. And so having people that actually can help with this precision and help us have great human health, but really tackle, in essence, not just that personalized medicine, but the bigger picture as well is really powerful.
We are down to our last drugs for gonorrhea, so it's really important we address this now.
Okay. Yeah, no, go for it, Ali, please. This is a moment to tell people how important it is.
Yeah. If resistance gets away from us from this, we do not have much in the bank, because there's not a huge amount of incentive to actually develop new drugs either, because they're expensive. They won't be used unless we need them. So they're sort of kept for, for
So, Liz, I'm pivoting to you. I would love to hear a little bit more about what you're working on with Aiken and AI and robotic technology for the home, and some of the big opportunities and problems that you're trying to address. Share with us a little bit about the things that do keep you in that moment, really focused on what you're doing, and why you're making this the next decade's work and what you hope to see.
I think any time you're going to build something great, whether it's working for an employer, working in research, or building a company, you have to really have a very clear and almost visceral picture of what you want your life to look like. You won't know exactly what your company or your project's going to look like in 5 years, but you can have a very clear idea of the sort of gravity it's going to have and what its shape is going to be. So the why of why I'm doing this is probably pretty important. I've been building technology for most of my life, and bringing in AI into various aspects. The last company was a pure play AI. And what I found was that every single deployment we went into, so at Cognia, we were building very sophisticated human level interaction systems, and then we would be able to throw them into any unstructured system. So we were the first in the world to build the very good, accurate customer support bots that you see at the bank level, the really, really good ones on banks. We were putting conversation systems into robots. We were putting state management systems into robots and virtual worlds. We basically got really efficient at taking classic AI, rules engine plus machine learning, sticking it together in various templates and configurations and throwing it into infinite environments, and then tracking and reporting and optimizing really fast. So we're just a great set of tools to do that. And that's how we scaled. And the thing is, I deliberately picked highly complex areas with high volume. So we're first in financial services, chronic disease management, health tech, tech support. Every single deployment we went into, we were able to shift population behavior at scale by anywhere from 15 to 50%. So I remember, and we went, great. We had a media company saying, well, people just fixated on our website. So we built a companion girlfriend that just people talk to for 20, 40 hours a week. And we were doing this because we were getting paid. And every time we did this, I thought, like, shareholders are rewarding this behavior. But what are we building? And I step back and I know today that we don't even think about it, but Facebook, Amazon, Google are AI companies. We will slump in front of a television on a Friday night, watch a movie that an AI has generated, drink some beer because some nudge has come to us from our virtual assistants or, our ad behavior. We're moving into a world where I believe more than 40% of our household decisions will be implicitly made and nudged on us by various combinations of platforms. And I believe about a third of our interaction time is going to be with technology or in technology-mediated environments. Now think about this world. Imagine, like right now today, Amazon Prime before COVID was in about 60 or 70% of US households. When I was living in San Francisco, I'd open my front door every day and there'd be 5 boxes on the doorstep. I'm an environmentalist, but Alexa knew what I wanted before I knew I needed it. And I'd open up the box and there's the plastic and there's a Post-it note inside. And I'm watching our families' behavior change. In America, people eat more restaurants and takeaway than they do actual home cooked groceries. So every little aspect of life in the home is being shifted and mediated and nudged this way. And we're building a world where we end up with instant consumption. We end up with Donald Trump. We end up with more money on Uber Eats than actual food. The cost of that is borne by the ecosystem, by our health system, by our family relationships. We're staring at social media for 20 hours a week instead of just talking to the person next to you. And that's because we're being nudged that way and because we're rewarding that. So I've basically set out to build a different shape to the universe, the most ridiculously complex company I've ever built. It's the hardest AI I've ever built. And we don't actually get transactional monetization hits. So it's just a crazy thing. I'm trying to break a market and do new technology. I'm fascinated by the next generation of AI. So we've built a chaos-based AI system that's not another neural net. It's really interesting. And then the application we're putting it into is the human home. It's the biggest frontier. We don't think of home as a workplace, but it is. It's 40% of GDP. Someone is thinking about what you're having for dinner tonight. If it's you that knows what you're having for dinner tonight, you're the primary caregiver in your home. If it's not, somebody else in your life is giving 20 to 30 hours a week. This is data from the Department of Labor to do that. And we have shifted this since the freaking 60s. Like I'm doing we have dishwashers and washing machines and we dropped it of managing and running a home, and we're doing physical robots because sorry if I'm going on the home-based ambient system. We started out with deep tech research, like pure research. We wouldn't tell our investors what the application was because we have to do science first. That means we're probably going to fail. Then we got a NASA contract. So we did a deployment with them, and now we actually deploying to NDIS discipline. We've actually built robots for NASA as well, for habitat management and task support. And we're busy doing pilots for those in the home starting December. So yeah, I mean, basically what I'm driven by is one, I have my own problem to solve. I just think it's stupid that technology hasn't solved this cognitive and labor cost of running the home. But secondly, it's a bit tertiary. Like if I want to change how we consume carbon or whether we become kinder as a society, are we ever going to elect another Donald Trump? Are we going to eat more consciously? The best way I can think to do that is exactly what I'm doing. And we're a public benefit corporation, so we've had a fair bit of investment, but all our shareholders know that we're trying to build a different model of capitalism. So it's a grand fun experiment. It's been more arduous than any company I've ever built, though.
But you sound more passionate about this, that this is truly not a decade's work, but potentially your life's work.
Correct.
Yeah, you can see. There was a great question that somebody, I was been watching the chat and I'm looking at the Q&As, and for people that do have questions, please pop them into the Q&A, and I will try and weave them into the conversation. But, it's a great question. Somebody put in there going, your vision's very broad. How do you, keep it focused and deliver? And I think all three of you, your vision is actually massive about the types of things that you want to achieve, right? Ali's going after the superbug that's going to kill us all, and trying to deal with that. If I can summarize, I mean, but you're doing that through a very targeted focus of how you're doing that. Peter, you're trying to, solve all of the waste that we have in production of food and deal with our carbon emissions. And Liesl, you're really trying to change us as consumers to be completely different and actually have some, I believe, what I take away from how you speak about it is have some autonomy to our lives to actually focus on really matters versus being nudged in a direction and so those are massive big visions. I'd love to hear from all of you actually. How do you actually land that down to a product or a part of the first product to bring to market, right? Because they're big, grand, sort of end state, glorious, visions. But actually getting to that, like, what am I going to do right now, and how do I bring that product to market? How do you bring that narrative to wrap around and get investment or to drive your team to bring something to market? And I'll throw that open to any of you, one of you that wants to give that a shot for an answer.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. It's actually a great question, and I guess this is where structure from the big corporates, at least in my case, come to play. I mean, in all honesty, we've spent for exactly that part. What is the problem we are trying to resolve? Because, as I said, from carbon emissions all the way to how do we make do with what we're already producing rather than constantly keep on expanding and taking more and more and more? How do you utilize what we have much more effectively so it's enough? And those are very big and lofty points for either investors or for business to be built or something constructive to be done. So it's like, how do you eat an elephant? And you essentially go, one bite at a time, and you start breaking it down to what is the true core and true problem you can actually tackle now. One of the things we found is that defining a problem is actually probably the hardest thing. And even now, we are now going through another iteration of, okay, this is what we built. This is where we are going. Let's start back from scratch, from state one, and start revising it and looking at it continuously. Are we on the right path? What's missing? How can we package this in a way that the world can consume, or the investors or the stakeholders can actually understand? Because all these lofty things have so many pieces and it's easy to get lost. Simplest thing, I guess, persistency. It's like focus on one thing that you can deliver and focus on one thing that can actually get you to sustainability, that you can actually then have your own revenue and your own ability to keep on building.
Ali, Liesl, do you want to add anything to that?
From my point of view, I would say it's about listening. It's about staying close to those that are working out at the front line in health, and listening to their needs, their desires, how they wish to be able to treat their patients better, what kind of tools they need. So often when I invent something, I invent it for a specific need. So, somebody says, there's all of these mutations in cancer, we really need to know a quick way of sort of getting to the bottom of what they all are, because, if we know what they are, that they're informative. So therefore we invented towards that goal. But the inspiration comes from the medical need, and that comes from the clinicians on the front line. And those people are great, because they are everything to a company like SpeedX, because they are our inspiration. They are our collaborators on the journey, and then they are the early adopters that actually put it into practice and get it out there and show the rest of the world that actually this is a valuable new path that we can take towards better healthcare.
I have a bit of a different take. I think biotech is a different long path. With deep tech, if you start out looking for the problem and what you know, you end up building for what's been happening for the last 10 or 20 years. And especially in Australia, where we have a bigger divide to actually scale globally, we really need to be building for the future. And the way I do that is this is the hardest part. Before I start a new company or new venture, I commit to 3 to 6 months of thinking. It's not work. I'm meeting every venture capitalist who will take a meeting with me. I'm going to every conference I can afford. I'm reading everything I get my hands on. And I do this before I commit to the path. Then you start sensing where, as I said earlier, society is going, where technology is going. And then the next big step is your vision board. What is it you want your life to be like? What's the broad shape of your company 10 years from now or 5 years from now? Then you lock that down. And I lock it down into what I call valuation drivers. I've never run a classic business plan up. People product plan gets outdated inside 30 days in what we do. But I run what I call valuation driver models. So really workshop with key people or myself. And I think, what are the core value? I'm not talking about the value of the company, like what will the shareholder pay for value, but what is your value in the world? I had a great mentor. I was telling him he ran one of the very big giant virus tech companies, got to $1 billion. And he said to me, he had 3 simple things: get customers, keep customers, monetize customers. And everybody knew that. Everyone walked in the door, every journalist. So I'd already formulated that so Cognia, for example, the very early days, before we even had a product, before we had anything, my co-founder and I sat down, we did separate whiteboards and separate rooms, came back together, did the whole mind map thing, and we ended up with our valuation drivers, how we spend this precious time and energy and every dollar we get through the door and every minute we have spares. Defensible AI. This was pre-Siri. This was pre-GTP3. This was pre-everything. Okay. So, it wasn't pre-everything. It's been all these waves of AI. We're talking like 2005, where pretty much everyone said, don't you know there's an AI winter? What are you doing? So defensible AI technology, fix actual problems, and mass uptake. And as the macroeconomic environment shifts around you, can kind of move between this. Like, I've never failed a company, but I've failed 20 companies, because inside there we launched a social media instant bot that any kid with a social media profile could put up a bot in an hour. And we had magnificent uptake in MySpace, and most of you probably never even heard of MySpace. So we basically, because we were in the mass uptake phase, we got a whole bunch of media companies going. We were doing media characters. We were in Second Life, which was the metaverse, pre-current metaverse. Then 2008 hit, and there was just no money. Like, earning a fraction of a cent on a chat meant nothing. So we then pivoted just slightly on the same paradigm to fixing problems. We already had human level chats. So we went to banks and went, hey, what does a customer support call cost you? $18. We could do it for 18 cents. And then we could pivot back to mass uptake when the market allowed. But all the way through was defensible AI. I have a week of time. Do I spend it on patents? Do I spend it on running around because some book publisher wants this? Does it serve fixed problems? Mass uptake or defensible AI? No, don't do it. Yes, do it. With the kin, it's a little bit different, because as a public benefit corporation, we have a social mission we report against. So it's a bit abstract. We're interested in this reciprocal evolution of technology and humanity. So our key mantra is we need to grow the AI. We need to grow it and evolve it in a way that it thinks and reasons more like a human. We need to grow the human. By using the technology, our state needs to change for the better. And we need to grow the relationship. So there's this depth of trust in our use of technology. And then we have metrics around that. How many kin, we don't call customers, they're our family, they're our kin. How many kin are using it? What is their measurable state change in their life? Is your life getting better week to week because you're using this? And then, do they trust us? And do we deserve that trust? So, that informs everything. Someone will be sitting in front of me in a job interview and I'll go, nah, not going to fit. Do we build this feature or not? Do we launch that product line or not? Our website, by the way, was a rapid reassembly for an NDIS launch, but our US site has much more of our deep tech and robotics and advanced AI work that we've done for the last 6 years. So that's how I do it. And yeah.
So there's a common thread I'm just going to tie together, which people might not sort of see here. But one of the things I notice between all of our founders and the journey and the conversation is they all can talk to a bigger vision and a broader vision. And I kind of just want to hone into that for the moment because it is National Science Week. And, you know, sometimes we focus on the science and the discovery and the engineering component of it. But I think the ability to communicate your why in that and the bigger vision and how it actually leads towards that transformational change and outcome is something that you're hearing from each one of these people today in quite a different way. They're all trying to solve really wicked challenges in a very different pathway and very different timescales and very different, you know, markets. But the communication of how they talk about their purpose and their vision in that and their science and technology is something that relates to more than just, you know, the people on their team or more than just the people that are like them as well. And so a bit of encouragement to all of you out there before we sort of start to think about vision and future, but a bit of encouragement for all of you out there that might be studying. And I see there's lots of people on the call that are, you know, finishing up PhDs or studying or thinking about, I think I saw somebody going, you know, I'm a lapsed academic, so I've found my freedom. I'm like, good for you. There's nothing wrong with academia though, as well. You know, both pathways are great. But, you know, finding out how do you communicate what you're doing and your why and your purpose is really one of those fundamental skills that I just encourage you to kind of to work at and to find a community of people to talk to. We are kind of getting close to time, and I want to kind of be a little bit bold and visionary. And I'm gonna be parochial in Australia for this for our founders on the call. Not because I think that we only need to solve for problems for Australians, but I think Australia can be a big driver in solving global problems, but doing it here. And you're all here, so that's my parochialism today. I'd love to hear from each one of you. You know, what do you think that we collectively in Australia, whether we're policymakers, whether we're participants on this call today, whether we're scientists, we're engineers, we're VCs, we're funders, what do you think some of the things that we need to be considering and doing to build more businesses like yours, to build more deep tech businesses in this country that actually can solve fundamental problems for people, planet, and prosperity? And I'm going to throw that open. No biggie, but I'd love to kind of hear your views on this, because I'm very hopeful in this, that there's a lot more that we could do to drive much more, you know, creation in this space. But love your thoughts. Who wants to go first?
I'm just going to stand on my bandwagon that no one wants to hear, and I'm just going to share a data point with you guys. And if I may screen share for a second. First of all, I just want to ask the audience if everyone knows how many women have won a Nobel Peace Prize or a Nobel Prize of any shape.
You're going to make me cry.
I think it's about
rage.
Yeah, I don't know if the audience ever speak, but take a wild guess. I think it's around 58 last time I looked. Now I want to ask the audience, how many women founders have taken their company public on the NASDAQ?
That's going to make me even cry more.
In history, in all of human history, about 20. It is harder to found a company and take it public than it is to win a freaking Nobel Prize for a woman. Why? Are we dumb? Are we stupid entrepreneurs? Do we not have determination? Do we not understand markets? Do we not build technology? No. I'm going to show you, this is the best we've ever done. In funding, this is what I'm up against. Right out the gate, this is the deal count for female founder companies. And guess what? Even if we get this paltry 2% of funding, this is deal value. I'm the smallest company in every one of my investors' portfolio, and I'm the one with the most wins under my belt. So what we have to do is we raise a fraction of the funding. I have to work 50 times harder than my male peers. And I think that's why we don't have more women in our building. As if you heard me say, I stepped 6 years. Who's your AI? I set up and I'm sorry if I'm sounding agitated by this, but I'm kind of over it. I kind of thought if I built like pretty big companies and I freaking got patents that IBM's using every freaking day, and you're probably talking to some of my technology today, that people go, hey, let's just hurl money at her and let her go take on Jeff Bezos. And I've had to find a beachhead that's high revenue generating, and it's been 8 years. And I just think we are basically losing 50% of the talent pool and giving them 1/50th of the resources. How dumb a use of human intellectual capital is that? And what different world we could have if we change that. That's me.
I want to applaud that and get very excited about it. And I couldn't agree more. And I see a couple of people in the chat saying that. Ali, I'm going to throw to you, and you can go in any direction that you want with this, but I do just want to shout out that a female-led business, and you're at something like over 60% women in SpeedX. It's really high number, but what do you think we need to do in Australia, and what can we do more of?
Well, I thought about that question, and one of the very basic things is, of course, we need to support our universities. But the point that I was also going to make was, let's not leave half of those really clever graduates behind, because that is what we do. And it might seem like I might have some sort of bias, the fact that my company has nearly 70% women. Actually, it's not, because if you actually look at the percentage of graduates in the health sciences here in Australia, about 70% of them are women. So go figure. I've got the same percentage sort of coming in. I'm actually not showing bias. I'm just selecting the best person for the best job. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do at the government level. We need to keep the R&D tax and all those kind of things. The patent box could have been a good idea. It actually didn't pan out as yet. Just generally speaking, it would be. There's a million areas where we could do better. There's some areas that make, say, in my particular industry, quite difficult. It takes us a long time to develop a product. Then we have to wait a long time to actually get it through regulatory. Maybe if we could put some more people in regulatory to expedite the process of actually getting those products out onto the market. The FDA's, TGA's, fabulous, working really hard, doing their best. But if we could give ourselves an edge and cut down on, the time in that part of the journey, we could be more competitive on a world scale. But I applaud everything. I applaud everything that was said prior to my opening my mouth on that point.
Thanks. And Peter, your 2 cents. What do we need to do?
Look, I've lived in many places around the world and worked around, and every place has challenges and problems. What I found in Australia, first of all, there's an amazing potential here, an amazing pool of resources here. But there is also, I think, an inherent degree of complacency that is built into the whole system. Like, everything takes so long to do here, from government responses to policies and so forth. For 25 million people country, the amount of red tape and the amount of, again, that slowness that's built into the system makes it really, really hard. I mean, it's a known thing that if you really want to scale, you kind of have to go overseas. And that's a sad thing, because we have so much here, we can do so much here, we can change so many things here, and yet in order to make it work, we need to go overseas to get it to support in order to make it here. I mean, you're talking from governments to investors onwards. I mean, our investors here behave more like banks than investors and taking the real risks. You're talking about governments and policies, and there's so much tape, again, for 25 million people, that it becomes prohibitive to do anything, to get any grant. It takes such a long time that by the time you do that, you're so exhausted, you kind of have to start again or just forget the whole thing. So it is, I mean, on the other hand, it's also filter out the right ideas and let them succeed and get through. But it is a challenge. We do talk a lot about these things in Australia, but to actually see them in action is a very different story.
So I think we are kind of at time at the end of the panel, but if I can just give a reflection on that, I think we've almost come full circle to the beginning of this conversation and a couple of things that Liesl sent there about, entrepreneurship is a hard journey. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, there are more, well, I won't say there are more downs than ups, but there's a lot of ups. There's a really high highs and really, really low lows. And so I think that the sort of reflection that I would add to it, because I am a glass half full, literally a glass half full most of the time, is I think Australia does have amazing potential. And I think there's an opportunity, and my challenge to all of you who are watching this and engaging with us is to do two things. One is, what's the role that you can play in, unblocking some of those gaps, or encouraging things to, roadblocks to be removed, or driving change. We all have a sphere of influence and a sphere of control. So what can you do in that space? But I think the second one, and more importantly, it's something that I've just observed over my time and being a woman in a technical career, it can be a really lonely one at times. But when you find your community of people who are like-minded, who are trying to do something really challenging, what happens is that you have a support network, so that when you're doing something rough, when you're having a ridiculous conversation with somebody that, does make you want to scream a little bit, you've got a support network of people that are like you and that that are broader than you, that are kind of trying to do the hard things as well. And you can come together and support each other in that network. So my kind of passionate plea about this in, National Science Week and thinking about creating solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems is, for those of you watching this, is to get engaged in a community of like-minded individuals, right? These people that we have on the call today, our founders, are phenomenal individuals building amazing companies, and I'm pretty sure they're all hiring. So you should check out their websites if you're keen and you're really like wanting to connect on their passionate, because that's the beautiful thing about deep tech, is it's pretty resilient, because the fundamental challenges we're trying to solve are so hard. So lean in and be part of that, but come along and be part of Cicada's community. It's not just our residents here and the things that we do in this building. It's events like this. It's opportunities to connect with amazing, inspirational people and just kind of be, part of something. Develop your own idea, stress test it, pursue it, but do it alongside people who are maybe a little bit crazy enough to do the hard thing too, because it really matters to them. And I think if we do that, if we can build that collective and we can build that support network across this country, really it starts to become something very exciting to be a part of. And I am a believer in change. It's hard, but gosh, I love it. So with that at time, can I just thank my panelists today, Ali, Peter, Liesl, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you're doing, more importantly, and what you're contributing to Australia and to the world with the work that you do and the companies that you're building. I think it's phenomenal, and sometimes we don't necessarily recognise the impact of that. Thank you for being so, what was the word that you used at the beginning of this thing? Dogmatic, I think,
masochistic.
Masochistic. Thank you for being a little bit masochistic about the problems that you're trying to solve. I appreciate that. And it's just been a pleasure to have you join us today and be part of this conversation. And again, please connect with us. Please connect with our founders on this call today, and be part of doing some science and engineering that matters, because the world needs you to be. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.